Are we just straight in, or?
Yeah.
Oh, we're not.
No?
I
asked if you were ready!
I'm ready now. Yeah, it's fine. I'm ready.
Doesn't sound like
Just
you're
took me
ready.
10 extra seconds to get ready. It's fine.
Oh my god. Okay, well, we're gonna do the Silent Hill thing today. We're gonna talk about Silent Hill 1 and prep for Silent Hill Origins, which will still probably be a ways away because we're kind of focusing on Alan Wake right now. It's Oops All Alan right now.
Yeah. Play Alan before to go home.
Gotta get it done before you leave. And also I'm not excited to play Origins. I'm not looking forward to it at all.
We have seen a playthrough of it. It's one of the better ones of the new ones, maybe? From a gameplay perspective, it just kind of...
I mean, we'll see.
Try and step in on the old law.
A little bit. But that's why we're doing this. We know that it tries to make a bunch of changes that are stupid and silly. And we wanted... And because we're trying to be... Holy shit! Sorry.
It's been 3 years?
It's been 3 years. Oh god, it's been 3 years. I mean, the 3-year streamiversary did happen in September, and I didn't do nothing for it. But hi, Allie. Thank you for the sub for 3 years. That's wild. How's it going? How are you doing? Yeah. You like our beautiful presentation board? We're gonna do little doodles and stuff. We're gonna be little guys here. See? Oh, smiling man.
Can you get a little Harry? Maybe we should have a little Harry.
Do we want a little
Sorry.
Harry? No, we can get a little Harry. No, we gotta get a little Harry.
Time to think about what I'm gonna say.
I mean, TLDR. We're just gonna go over some big lore bits from the first game, so that when it is time for us to jump into Silent Hill Origins, we'll all be a little better prepared, and a little more knowledgeable about what they've done wrong and why they've done it wrong. How could they have done it so wrong? Travis, you got Gwen's cold. Oh no. Little Harry. Oh god.
It's too narrow.
Oh no.
You know what? We'll pretend that's the PlayStation. This is the Game Boy version of. Okay, we got 2 of them now.
Oh no. Okay, hold on. I can fix this. I can fix it.
It's a Harry.
That's a Harry. That's our lovely boy?
Yeah.
I said yes, not on screen. That's weird.
Oh.
He's deaf. There's no border there. Okay, let me just make this, like, a pixel bigger. Please? Please. There we go. That's better. I hope that you and Travis feel better soon. Yeah. But yeah, we're just gonna talk about Silent Hill and why Harry is the best. And really, this will help us when it comes time for Silent Hill Shattered Memories as well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, fuck, that was a horrible heart. These are all very rough. Listen, I'm not good at using a mouse and keyboard for drawing. That one was also bad.
And the attempts were made, you know, you just about tell. The right colour.
We love Harry here. Good dad. But yeah, that's the plan. And yeah, Origins.
Silent Hill orange. I tried to say oranges, and I got
then you went
somewhere in the middle.
It's gonna be a couple weeks before Origins, which is, you know, for the best. It's not a good game. Even if it is the better of the newer ones. They're all bad?
All the Silent Hills. Every one of them.
Gonna be horrible.
It's gonna be mostly horrible.
Mostly horrible.
They do most of the games are bad, I think.
Yeah, they're not great, is the thing.
The ones that go to really, really good.
Yeah!
That's why we care enough to talk about Silent.
the first three, and then we can kind of tack on the fourth with like a little asterisk. Be like, these are good. These are the examples of good Silent Hill games. Everything else after that just kind of falls off in all various sorts of weird ways. Isn't that exciting? But yeah, so I guess there's no like nice segue for any of this other than just being like, hey, let's talk about Silent Hill.
Let's talk about Silent Hill.
None of these are the things that I wanted. I'm pulling up all the wrong things. It's fine, actually. Make this small.
But we did play through Silent Hill, but
We missed a couple of things.
we missed a couple of big notes, and also it's not entirely obvious what's happening in Silent Hill
Nuts.
just from playing it.
They like to throw a bunch of things at you and be like, hey, you pick, but actually, there is one correct answer. But also, you pick. Probably because they weren't sure if they were going to get a second or third or fourth game, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of here's just this weird little world that we're working in.
And also, we experience this world through the eyes of Harry Mason, a boy, who's the best dad.
He's the bestest dad. So much.
Harry doesn't really care about the magic bullshit that's going on. Harry wants to save his daughter. He's very preoccupied with that. So, the journey Harry takes doesn't necessarily tell you all the things that are going on. You have to kind of
Fill in the gaps a little bit. If you're interested in knowing what's going on, I'm just gonna start grabbing pictures of all these characters. I'm sorry. Alessa's a little wide. It's fine.
wide Alyssa.
Wide Lessa. Yeah. It is very much Harry is not interested in anything. He just wants to find his little girl. She's 7, short black hair, about this tall. Have you seen her? Yeah, so like it gives you all the information you need, more or less, to put it all together, but it's not particularly forthcoming with it.
If you're playing through the game normally, by the time you get to like the giant moth, it's probably lost. Yeah, it gets a bit weird.
That is if you haven't.
Lots of people do say like they got to the big worm or the moth or something and then they just gave up because the game had gone crazy, and it's not.
I can't
It seems that
blame
way.
them for it, but
Yeah.
also consider all the answers will be revealed. I guess to start, monsters. Monsters are a good place to start.
We're
Hey,
talking about monsters.
what's up with those monsters? What's up with those weird guys? Sorry, my heater just kicked on, so you're gonna hear that for a little bit.
You're gonna have to deal with that. It's real cold.
Yeah, it's chilly outside. But you said, oh, like you had a thing to say.
I can't remember.
Oh, okay, cool.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. TLDR, all the monsters. And why are these are all the wrong monsters?
Yeah, I think you got all of them in the whole series.
I didn't want all of them.
You got Dunk Mong Man and
Oh no.
everyone.
Well, Splithead and Mumbler and Grey Child and all these are all
Puppet Nurse. Wait,
yeah, puppet nurses.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically all of the what is this? Just trying to grab images while we're doing things. It's fine. Here's a monster. Oh boy, look at that little guy.
Watch out, get you. He has a tiny neck. We didn't see him because we were playing the other version of the game where he's bears.
Got the wrong one. God, he looks horrible. Sorry, buddy, I've done terrible things to you. Here, we'll pull up a Mumbler. Just for good measure.
Hit those.
What do you mean? They're your favorite.
Wait, yeah, that's just the bear, right?
That's just the bear?
Okay, that's just the bear that replaces the Grey Child most of the...
Thinking about the Jumpin' Man.
I was thinking about the Jumping Man.
Get a Jumpin' Man for you.
Oh, don't get me a Jumping Man.
I'll get you a Jumpin' Man. But yeah, all of the horrible things that we see are just representations of things that specifically Alessa is afraid of, which is fair. Some of the things that she's imagining up are pretty fucking horrible. Let's be real. Are you Jumpin' Man?
So,
No.
as the series went on, it started to be like, Like, everyone knows Silent Hill 2 is, like, all about James's, like, inner demons. This is what he's seen when he's in Silent Hill. Silent Hill 1 is actually the same way. This isn't something they introduced later. It's just Harry's not that important.
Poor Harry.
Yeah, it's not his stuff that he's seeing. It's Alessa's stuff.
Yeah. Harry is, again, exclusively here to find his daughter.
Just here looking for his daughter.
He and his daughter were gonna come here to... I found him, he's a romper. Your favorite man.
Really bad.
He and Alessa were here to visit because she wanted to, basically. This is where Harry and his late wife found Alessa, and they were like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we went back there and said hi? Oh boy, that boy is large.
Got spaghetti coming out.
Got spaghetti coming out. So yeah, I don't know if we should go over, like, all of the meanings of all the creatures. Sorry.
Yeah, we definitely could do.
Being very particular about how I'm sizing this guy. He's so big.
It's worth mentioning in Silent Hill, like, literally the opening cutscene and the ending cutscene are the only parts that take place in the real world. Even when it's not in, like, Dark Silent Hill, regular Silent Hill is not the real world.
Yeah, it's
it's the boy.
I'm putting him here
I can see him.
because people need to know that he's here. I don't know why I'm drawing him like this, but I am.
Actually, that's James's monster. He wouldn't be here yet.
Exactly, he wouldn't be. So we're gonna draw our little guy with his caked up ass and a funny little foot. And this is a pyramid head free zone.
Oh no.
This is not a place for these boys. Get them out of here. I don't know what I'm doing. Take this away from me or I'm gonna keep drawing silly things.
That's fine. That's probably the best part of the stream.
But yeah, all the monsters are things that Alessa is afraid of. Like the little gray children, these guys. You can see my cursor. Let me just circle this bad boy real quick. This boy, great child. It's all the kids that bullied her. Poor Alessa. Just a sad poor Alessa.
Yeah, the little, like, penguin ghosts running around.
Those are basically just her.
Alessa's, and then the big scary kids with knives. All the kids involved bullied her.
Yeah.
Except sometimes they're bears, but that's just because it was censored. It's not, like, a reason behind that.
Europe just got very scared about the idea of people shooting these short creatures that I would argue do not look like children.
They're definitely monsters. But
I can get it. I can get why they were a little weary of it. Yeah.
And the main ones which you find right at the start, the dogs and the pterodactyls.
The pterodactyl guys. What are those called? What are those called? Air Screamer.
Why is it called Air Screamer?
Because it's in the air and it goes. Rah! Probably.
That's probably it.
Oh! The Air Screamer is a manifestation of an illustration of one of Alessa Gillespie's favorite books, The Lost World.
I actually don't know why. I know that she's scared of dogs.
It is a
Just
pterodactyl.
don't like dogs.
It's a pterodon.
It's actually a pterodactyl.
Actually, fine.
Fucking pterodactyls chasing you around Silent Hill. Oh, I said that as a joke. Anyone a joke?
It wasn't a joke. But yeah, I mean, like most of the things that you see, they're weird bug monsters. She doesn't like bugs. She's a little girl. She's scared of bugs. I get it. Yeah. We can get into puppet nurses later. That's a later thing. That's a thing for later.
Yeah.
I guess overarching plot. What the fuck happens in Silent Hill 1? What goes on? What is a Silent Hill 1 actually? As mentioned, Harry and his late wife They couldn't have a kid, but they wanted a kid, and they were so super lucky to find a child on the side of the road.
Free child with no just available, allowed,
free range child.
Yeah.
Sweet baby Alessa. They found her. I could draw them.
Good job.
Could draw them, but also consider. What if I just grab this and post this here, actually?
Yeah.
Oh, look at them. Look at how happy they are. There's some Bloodborne music playing, which is not great.
It's ominous.
Talking about how happy these two were. Yeah.
The first thing Harry knows about is he just finds this cool kid, this cool baby on the side of the road, and then decides to keep it.
Let's keep this cool road baby.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll never refer to Cheryl as a road baby ever again. Sorry I've done this to you, Cheryl. I mean, there's so much to fill in before and after. How'd this baby get on the road? Colt.
Yeah,
That's the answer to that one.
We'll get to that. Should we? That's why I wanted you to write down all the things. So
Yeah.
we could just get them as the pop up.
But everything's told out of order.
Everything is told out of order, which is a problem. But we need some kind of structure.
We don't, though, is the thing. Here's the thing. This is the inciting incident for the video game, right? Harry and wife find baby. How did baby come to be on road? Like I said, it's a cult. There's a cult involved. And I don't want to say that they're actually called the Order. That might just be a thing that the later games decided.
Oh no. I don't think the saying.
I just think it's a cult.
Just a cult.
Just think they're a cult. So we'll just leave it at, the Silent Hill cult.
Silent Hill is it used to be like a resort town.
Yeah.
And it's kind of dying off. And it's not like dying off in an interesting way. It's just like no one goes there anymore. So
it's dying off in the way that most resort towns do. They just sort of fucking stop existing.
Silent Hill itself, until the events of Silent Hill 1 have happened, is just a boring town. It's just, you won't want to visit. You won't want to go there. Like, most of the houses seem kind of deserted. Most of the businesses are closing or closed.
Nobody's around. It's just the same, 15 families who've been there for the last 80 years.
Yeah.
But there is a cult.
There's a bit of a cult.
Because of course there is. And their whole shtick is trying to birth God. Very humble sort of goals that this cult has. More or less, not Laura. Alessa's mother, Thalia, decides that Alessa would be a great vessel for this choice, for this whole shtick.
She thinks that there kind of is magic in this world, and for some reason she thinks that Alessa has good magic, as particularly.
She'd just be really good at birthing a god, I guess.
She'd be real good at it. Talia also has a huge tie.
The best tie.
It's so big.
Where was that picture that I was looking at and clicked on? And then it said, haha, jokes. We'll do it this way. This is worst mom.
Yeah, Dahlia is a problem. She's bad, actually.
She is the worst. The most awful. We'll put her right here.
Again, since we're like Harry and we don't have much stake in this other than trying to find a dog, we meet Dahlia a few times. She doesn't directly lie to us, I think. But
no,
she dodges just about every question.
There is so much deflection going on.
Every time Harry asks a question, it's actually extremely pertinent. And every time she answers not that question, I think he asks sorry.
No, that's fine. He asks a lot of stuff, like, hey, what's going on here? There's a lot of weird monsters, and she just sort of, feeds into it and is like, oh, yeah, those are things here. But it's it's either don't worry about it at first, or you should probably do something about it. Here, take this weird triangle that I have, and go get rid of this scary lady spirit who's bad, actually. and it's like, ma'am, that is your daughter. She is bad because you have abused her a lot. But you know.
Harrius. Like, she says a bunch of stuff about Alessa, and Harrius, like, you're talking about my daughter, right? And she just kind of skips that one and just keeps going.
Don't worry about your daughter. Look at this over here, actually.
Alessa and, is it Cheryl? Cheryl. Alessa and Cheryl are basically identical, right?
They're the same thing.
Yeah, they're kind of the same thing.
Alessa,
kind of, a little bit.
Alessa is the, like,
the same thing.
Is one part of the soul, and Cheryl is the other part of the soul, because to try and, like, foil the plans, I think it was an attempt to, like, foil the cult's plans.
Yeah.
Alessa, like, split herself into multiple bits to try and make sure that the cult couldn't do what they were doing. Sorry, I have hiccups.
Dahlia is like the town crazy lady, but actually she's the only one who like really knows what's going on. Kaufman is also in the cult. He doesn't really know what's going on.
Kaufman's just there to make money by selling drugs.
Yeah.
And he is a bad man for so many reasons. Okay, Kaufman. Hi, Michael Kaufman.
Hi.
Horrible Mike.
Sitting in the sky.
Wowie!
Big.
He doesn't need to be that big.
He needs to be that big.
I don't want to put him over there. He doesn't deserve to be next to Harry. We'll put him here. Sorry, Alessa, you're getting covered up by bad people. I want to make him wide, because that's very funny to me.
Dahlia's probably the worst person we meet, but he's definitely the second boss.
Please type. Please, I wanted to type. Oh! This is fun.
Cool.
Why would you do this to me?
Oh, it's cool. Yeah.
There we go. How does this look? How much of a mess is this? Beautiful.
It's a bit of a mess. I like it. We'll make it a collage.
Yeah. Yeah, Kaufman's part of the cult. He's helping fund the cult, but doesn't necessarily believe in any of it. He's just there to sell his drugs. Cause, you know, of course there's drugs. What cult isn't complete without drugs? Oh, go for it.
The scope of the cult, like, seems to drastically increase after Silent Hill 1. But,
Yeah.
like, as far as we know, there's, like, we see, like, an extra guy in a flashback, I think, at some point. There's, like, 3 guys, including Dahlia and Kaufman.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 of them.
There's probably a few more than that. You'd think they'd want to be there for the birth of God.
At this
And
point,
they're not.
it feels like they very much either disbanded or maybe have gotten taken out? Who knows? Who knows what's happened?
We don't really know what's going on, but it's not like a big operation. It's Dahlia and Kaufman, and the dynamic there's not great. Kaufman... No. I don't know to what extent Kaufman was expecting anything to happen except for the cult to get him drugs that he could sell, and then he could sell drugs and make money. And then things do start to happen, and he gets really cold feet about it.
Oh, absolutely. He's just sort of like, I don't know about this, actually.
Which is really bad, because Kaufman's like one of the main guys in the cult. Like, he's really important. But,
Run.
as soon as like, anything weird occurs, it's just...
Yeah, he starts pulling out real hard and being like, maybe actually this is a bad idea. And it's like, well, it's too fucking late, buddy. You are in it. He's a horrible man who abuses his employees.
Yeah.
Bad man. Who else? Who else do we have? We got Sybil. Sybil's there.
We got Sybil.
Sybil exists. Is that it? Is that her name? Yeah, it is. Fucking yeah, it is. Sybil's fine for a cop. You know, she's a cop.
She is a cop.
But you know, how good of a cop can she be when she gives her fucking service arm to Harry?
Yeah, that's a bit weird.
I'm starting to find some weird images of Sybil, so we'll stop scrolling.
Oh, jeez.
I just wanted in-game image. Oh, fuck. Sybil, you are huge.
Oh, jeez.
And now you're narrow.
That's fine.
We'll put her over here, because she's technically a good guy. I guess.
Sybil's one of the few people you talk to who seems to have all the marbles. She's also the person who knows the least about what's happening out of everyone in the entire game.
Yeah.
She's just there to look in where the drugs is coming from, and she gets pulled into Silent Hill proper when Harry does. We think that like Silent Hill would just be like a boring town if you were just driving through it, unless you have business there, and then you actually get like you end up in the real Silent Hill where the monsters are going around and stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just looked like somewhere you kind of didn't want to stop. Not necessarily because anything really bad had happened, just because it looks boring.
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
If you stop and get gas, maybe, if you absolutely had to, but probably just wait until the next town.
I don't know if it's cause like she's looking into stuff there specifically that she ends up in Silent Hill, or if like it's because Harry gets pulled in and she's near Harry when it happens.
A little bit of A, a little bit of B.
Yeah.
She does seem to know like a decent amount about what's going on with the drug operation, so it feels and it's not clear if it's necessarily, and it could just be that I'm forgetting. But it's not clear if it's something that she was investigating or just something that she like overheard in the office because everyone was talking about it. But she's there, and that's all I have to say about Sybil. Because she's fine.
She just doesn't like play a big role. She gives you your gun, which is lovely. Thanks, Sybil. You could have probably shouldn't, but thanks.
Maybe don't give me that. And then she shows up later if you're going for the good plus ending to tell you all about the drugs when you're starting to go into a hole in the wall, and she's like, "Hey, do you want to go into that hole?" And Harry's like, "Well, I gotta find my daughter," and she's like, "Happy holing."
Happy holing.
Happy holing. But yeah, she's there. She ends up falling under the influence of the stuff that's happening.
And that's one of the like switches for what ending we get.
Yep.
We
gooped her.
Yeah, we gooped her, and she got free of the weird parasite thing.
Yeah.
And then she was fine. She lived. Otherwise, you have to fight her until she's dead.
Until God kill her.
Yeah. God
kill the lady. Yeah, and I mean, she doesn't. Even if she's a cop, she doesn't necessarily deserve that. Probably. No. She's there. She's fine.
She's fighting you, but she's not doing it on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gets possessed by Alessa.
I guess one of the last major characters then is Lisa? Gotta get Lisa. Lisa is my sweet, precious baby, whom I love.
This is a really tragic character.
And I fucking hate that all the later games, like, more so than any other characters, is fully character assassinate her, and it's disgusting.
The thing with, like, there's no extra anything necessary. Like, if Lisa never got mentioned again, that would be fine.
Yeah. She was wrapped up in the stuff in Silent Hill 1, and did play, like, a pretty big part, a pretty big role when it comes to Alessa, but, like, no one knows about that. Her role and everything is very quiet. We're gonna put her over here, and she's gonna stay big, because I love her. She worked for Kaufman at the hospital. Obviously, she's a nurse. And got roped into taking care of Alessa once she was burned up during the ritual. And it was horrible for both of them. But Lisa took care of her despite the fact that she was fucking terrified of her. Understandably so. This child was not dead and should have been.
The thing you play on the TV, and then when you see the scene again later with all the sound talking about like the wounds never heal and they never stop bleeding, and there is no way this child should be alive. I change the bandages every day and nothing has changed. She's still bleeding. Where does this all come from even?
This child is tiny. She should not have this much gunk in her. Nah, and like her whole shtick is that she's a sad lady. She got roped into this and was blackmailed into keeping doing it. Kaufman was leveraging her with drugs, not necessarily of her own, free will. It seems like, and I could be wrong about that, but I won't hear any slander about my precious, lovely lady.
They needed someone to look after Alessa. They were treating Alessa secretly in the basement of the hospital. So they needed someone that could control. And Kaufman got Lisa hooked on the weird Silent Hill drugs that make you see demons to do that.
They're not just hallucinations, they are real. Oh god, you can peer into the other world.
Yeah, it seems like that. We do have a note for that, right?
Yeah.
One of the notes we missed.
We got Lisa's diary, which was one that I was like actively trying to find, and then I just fucking couldn't because it was in nowhere. Which is
really hard to find the note.
Anywhere in there. It's a horrible place to be in.
It is one of the important ones, I think.
Yeah.
It is very much part of like one of the red herring kind of things, but also it's a cool one.
It feels like it clears up some of the stuff, especially once you like know that the drugs aren't what's causing everything. They're not necessarily like useless. They're important to the story, but they're not. It's not all just drug-induced nonsense.
It's so like the first thing is the like parasites. We're pretty sure that like just killing random doctors and nurses and stuff who've been possessed. Like that. Oh, that seems too like big scale for Silent Hill.
Yeah, it's
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
The idea that like parasites have taken over and like are mind controlling everything is very silly.
The idea, but it's a little silly. The drug thing is a lot more plausible because we know Harry has been exposed to the drug.
Mm-hmm.
We know that happens as you go into the antique store, and that's when it gets really weird.
Yeah.
So, to some extent, what Harry's seeing probably is down to having been exposed to the drug.
But it's not necessarily just a hallucination.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll probably start with that. One about the White Claudia.
Oh, good.
Because we missed that one. We missed a note about the White Claudia, which is the plant that's found in and around Silent Hill that they use specifically for the drugs. The note says it's a perennial herb found near water. It reaches height of 10 to 15 inches. It's got oblong leaves and white blossoms. The seeds contain hallucinogen. Ancient records show it was used for religious ceremonies. The hallucinogenic effect was key. Which just makes it sound like everyone's just tripping balls and that all the monsters you're seeing aren't actually there. But actually, it is just used as a way to, like, more or less, and obviously, like, most of this is sort of just inference, but feels pretty substantiated. It's just a way to, like, view into this other realm, this horrible place where all these terrible monsters and ancient beings exist, and you probably shouldn't look at them for too long.
Probably don't take White Claudia.
It's bad. Don't do it.
Yeah, apparently tourists like it a lot. I think it's more if you keep taking it.
Yeah.
That you're gonna have problems, that you're gonna run into Pyramid Head.
Don't run into Pyramid Head, he's a
Pyramid
bad
Head
man.
free zone, we don't run into Pyramid Head here.
let me just also say that this is a drug-free zone.
Oh, dang. That's rich.
Only when it comes to White Claudia. It's bad. It's bad stuff. Don't
yeah,
take it.
it's not good stuff. You'll see elder gods and go crazy. It really does not work out for Lisa.
No.
Lisa just gets more and more ill and then dies. It's great.
Yeah, where's her? Oh, we can get rid of the. Yeah, we can get rid of this one. Trying to navigate tabs. Apologies. Here's hers. Want to read it?
Ask doctor to let me quit being in charge of that patient. It's too weird. Still alive, but with wounds that won't heal. Tell the doctor I quit. Won't work at that hospital anymore. The room is filled with insects. Even with doors and windows shut, they get in to spite me. To the hospital. Feeling bad. Need to throw up, but nothing comes out. Vomiting only bile. Blood and pus flow from the bathroom faucet. I try to stop it, but it won't turn off. Need drug. Help me.
Poor Lisa.
Yeah.
It is hard to tell if this is just like hallucinations or potentially Alessa like summoning shit, right?
It's
Mix thereof.
definitely hallucination, right? But
Hi Tom.
Hi, Tom.
We may or may not break for lunch for quiche and sandwiches. We'll see. We'll see how long it goes.
She's definitely hallucinating, but the stuff she's seeing is Silent Hill, right?
Oh,
it's dark
absolutely.
Silent Hill. She's seeing through in a dark Silent Hill.
There's lots of horrible bugs in Dark World. That's a thing.
My theory is that Alessa is mostly blameless in everything.
Fair.
That's what I've always assumed.
I
So
feel...
even if she can see into like Alessa's nightmare world, it's not Alessa's fault.
Yeah, it's not necessarily like Alessa trying to like cause issues for people.
I'll get into this. I think everything like Alessa does that's like aggressive is fully reactive, and she's just trying to
100%.
protect herself.
Even if it wasn't, I would argue that it's called for.
Yeah.
She has been through it. It has not been good for her. People have been horrible to her since she was a baby.
Basically exists in like the Nightmare Silent Hill, right? And sometimes in a wheelchair in lots and lots of bandages.
Yeah. It's just not a good time.
Yeah.
I should put a wheelchair on here. Hold on.
Oh, wheelchair? Here?
Just any wheelchair will do. We have like an old timey wheelchair. I type an old timey wheelchair.
Tiny wheel. It's got wooden wheelchair.
Which one of you? I like this one. It's wicker. Simu! Hello!
Simua's raiding with a party of two. Kaysh and the gang welcome you.
Trying to explain what happens in Silent Hill.
Oh god!
Big wheelchair.
Oh wow, why was it so large? Oh, now it's very tall.
How you doing, Simon? What are you playing?
Yeah, what are we doing? Let me do a shout out for you. Sorry, I was distracted by this giant wheelchair that happened.
Backpack hero.
Nice!
Oh, it's really cool. I'm gonna get it.
Do it.
Oh, lovely.
Nice. Welcome in. Nope, we can't see that past your skeleton head.
Or
Not your fault. That's where I put you.
much smaller in real life. You gotta see all the things behind me. That is
I
turned into Lego.
I have pixelated this wheelchair. You know what? It worked. It fits with the graphics.
It's PS1. It's a PS1 wheelchair. It's a jagged nightmare now. That's fine. We love that.
Right here. Sorry, my handwriting's so horrible here.
I mean, you're writing with the computer mouse.
Whee! Okay.
Harry's like very surprised when you see wheelchairs, and it's not
Weird.
necessarily because it's weird to see wheelchairs. It's more to draw your attention to it.
Yeah. But it's still it's just a weird thing that he does. I don't understand why he does that.
Just hates wheelchairs.
I can't believe it.
They're very startling to him.
I think what else we need to what else is there? Get rid of that wheelchair now. I mean, we touched base on most things. Drugs are real.
Yeah.
Drugs are making you see real things, but you don't necessarily know that that's the case.
Yeah, and they use those in religious ceremonies. So every time we're seeing, like, whenever Harry's pointing out, like, there's a white powder in, like, a thing near a statue. It's drugs. It's the drugs.
It's drugs.
That's more drugs happening to Harry. That is possibly why everything gets so weird after the antique shop.
Yeah. Just took a lot of drugs. Hey, kids.
He got exposed to a little bit of drugs. He didn't mean...
Accidentally took a bunch of drugs.
That's not... That also, the, like, ritual is happening at that point. So
yeah,
that's
things are gonna
definitely
go
making
anyway.
things wigglier, too. That's when, Sybil starts seeing things, too, as well, right?
Yeah, Sybil starts mentioning that there's a lot of strange things happening to her as well. And it's like, well, yeah, we've been telling you that since, like, the beginning. To help me find my daughter now?
You kind of have to be, like, involved with what's going on to be able to be killed by Silent Hill. Harry, he's looking for his daughter. He's got a vested interest in being there, so he can see the monsters the whole time. Kaufman is extremely seeing the monsters the whole time. We do see him kill one of the pterodactyls, which confirms that, but also, like, he's freaking out. He's having a bad time.
Not having fun there.
It takes a really long time for Sybil to start, like, talking
Yeah.
about... To start, like, understanding what Harry's talking about. It's possible that it's, like, the nosing around she's done while she was here that does that. It's possible that it's just the rituals happening. The barrier between worlds is breaking down.
A little bit of A, a little bit of B.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Also, she does then get directly possessed by Alessa.
Yeah, well, that's because she's weak, and easily manipulated.
She is a cop.
She's a cop. A cab. Yeah, I mean, she's fine. She's fine, as far as cops are concerned. I haven't seen her shoot a dog, so, you know. She's got that going for her. There are a lot of dogs in Silent Hill, though. Too many dogs, if you ask me.
Many dogs need shooting. Those ones.
It's true, they're monsters! Actually! Genuinely! Yeah. I mean, I feel like those are all the, like, super important beats. Am I missing anything?
Like, did we talk about, like, the fire and stuff?
Oh, not really.
Happened to Alessa. Yeah, that's the, like, actual inciting incident for everything that's happening.
Yeah, that was their attempt at setting up the ritual. I think that was like the first point that they did to be like, all right, we're doing this, we're making it happen. We gotta make this kid suffer, so that she can become open to accepting God into her.
They wanted her to die in the fire, right? But then when she survived that part, they tried to keep her alive.
I don't know that we get that confirmation in one.
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, no, I
thought like one of the cult guys were like complaining, and then Dahlia was like, "No, this is even better because we can just keep her alive in horrible agony for 7 years."
Might be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like
that.
Weird magic stuff. But I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what's going on.
I don't think any of them know exactly what's going on. It does feel like they're all sort of just winging it. Yeah, I guess they do end up summoning a god. Thanks to Harry just trying to save his daughter. He does do the stuff with like the Floros and stuff. That's when you find out that Dahlia was manipulating you the whole time.
Well, Dahlia's whole thing is there needs to be a ritual. It's gotta happen now. Alessa, half of her soul is in Cheryl, and the other half is hiding. The body in the wheelchair is Alessa's body, but there's nothing in it during the game.
Yeah.
We see her at the end. She's like present at the ritual.
Yeah, I think
that's actually Alessa, but Alessa's like spirit is hiding in Dark Silent Hill, and the rest of it's in Cheryl.
The body is Alessa, but that is where they're keeping Cheryl at this point, because they have caught her and they've like contained her soul within the body vessel.
Yeah, so it's just Alessa's still loose, and Alessa's trying to hide from you?
Yeah. Simon, have you never heard about Silent Hill at all? You should absolutely play
really
Silent
cool.
Hill. It's very good. It's wild and wacky and just really dang good. And you can play it, unlike Sirens, so you know.
Siren's really cool too.
Siren's great, but it isn't like impossible to play. It's horrible. Watch someone else play it. We could do.
We could do it sometime.
That one we would have to play or prepare for more because it's not as fresh. Yeah. It's good. Sorry.
If you play like Silent Hill 2, which is the one everyone will recommend,
yeah,
that's pretty straightforward. Silent Hill 1, there's like so much stuff going on in the background that it doesn't directly say. You just have to piece together through notes and inference, and it's really cool. I like that. I like that stuff a lot.
It's very good. Can I get an image of the Floros actually?
Yeah, some of the like cult artifacts, we don't. There's no way to know what's really going on with those. The cult think they work. We don't know where they came from. We don't know what the deal is. It's just a magic triangle.
2 is really good, but
It's also very good.
It's very different in silly little triangle here. I want to make it as big as possible. There's no pyramid heads. You're seeing a pyramid, but it's not a head. I'm telling you, it's fine.
We don't know where the cult is like getting all this shit from.
We just know they have it.
Yeah, we just know that they have it and it works. I think they're definitely buying it, right? They're not making it, but we don't know where this comes from.
Wait, are we talking about drugs?
No, the weird, like the pyramid and the gunkus.
Yeah, we have. Who knows where they got any of this?
The drugs they're making.
The gunkus, I think they also make, and I think it stems from the White Claudia. I could be wrong about that one though, but I know the drugs they're making, but it's like a highly involved process, which is why Thalia was like, I'm gonna destroy all of the aglophados that they have, which is what the gunkus that you use on Sybil is called. And why like Kaufman hid the one thing, the one vial in the fucking motorcycle.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that you can make very easily. The Floros and stuff like that, I assume they're just weird, wild, scary artifacts that you find. Like the Necronomicon, you know? No one really made it. It just sort of is.
It came from somewhere, but we don't know where.
We don't know where.
Dahlia didn't do that.
But yeah. Big.
Triangular. It's gonna wibble.
Yeah, I kind of cut out a section there. I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's not a pyramid head. That's what's important.
Yeah, it's not a pyramid head. Oops. There we go. I don't know why it did that. Yeah. I mean, it's typical cult stuff, you know? You get these weird artifacts from a time beyond your own, and you just use it to do weird, scary shit with. Don't ask where. It doesn't matter where it came from. You have it. That's what matters.
And when Harry either gunks Sybil or shoots her a lot of times, you then actually confront Alessa, and you use the Floros to knock her out.
Yeah.
And then Dahlia's kind of got everything that she needs for the ritual to bring about God.
And that's how you get the Bigman himself. Bigman. One word. It's the Incubus is what it's called. I usually just not the band, please. anything but the band. I usually just call him Samael because that's what Dahlia calls him, but it's this just horrible creature.
We don't really know what it is, and we don't really know what Silent Hill is. Like, there's not a point of reference for it, really. It's like, this is what comes through if you get the best ending. Every other ending gives you a different version, except I think every other ending gives you a different version. Like, the more stuff Harry knows about what's going on in the town, the more the form changes, the more like distinct it is, and the
get out of here. I think the two main forms are the incubus, and then there's the Alessa version.
Yeah, there's one that's like a really bright light.
Yeah, that's just Alessa.
And there's one that's like a shadow, right? That's like not really much of anything.
I don't remember that one, but
yeah,
possibly.
I might be wrong.
I usually go for one of two endings when I do mine, so like, so possibly.
I think if you get like a really crap ending, it's just like a black blur. Might be wrong.
Scared.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is fine. That's Silent Hill 3, actually. Hey, do you have any good? That's first. Ah, she's the incubator versus the incubus. Those aren't the same thing. Game. Those are not the opposite of each other either. Is the thing.
Also, incubus is way harder than the other forms.
So fucking horrible.
It does so much damage.
I know how to spell things. Is the thing. So those are the two main differences, or the two main forms.
She's gonna look exactly like that in the game. It's real bright over where she is.
Yeah, she's
Well, these are the same thing, right? But we don't.
Kind of. I mean, this is God, and it comes from her. This is just the vessel. This is the egg. The incubator is the egg. Think of the incubator as the shell for the incubus. And if you manage to get the good plus ending, you crack that shell, and the incubus comes out, and it's fucking horrible.
Yeah. Incubus is like very based on the like drawings of demons we find around.
Yeah.
We're not sure if like
if that's because that's what it looks like, or if that's just the form it takes.
Because that's what you're expecting.
Yeah. Maybe that's what he looks like. Maybe that's just the form it takes, because that's what we know and can comprehend. Who knows?
But this is something that's come through from the other world. This is like the only thing you see that's like fully alien.
Yeah.
All the like other monsters in the game are just like Alessa's like internalized trauma.
Yeah.
Like this is an actual thing that is its own thing. Yeah. And it's real bad. It's this coming through is like the inciting incident for the whole series. This is created the rift between worlds that is Silent Hill.
This makes it so that all the other people can kind of fall in and have all the horrible times that they have. Yeah. Oh boy.
My theory has always been that like since Alessa is like the bridge initially that it uses to that Silent Hill uses to like manifest itself. It just kind of, and Alessa's had the most horrible life out of any person who's ever existed. It just kind of wants that. It just kind of looks for that. It pulls people in who are like having a really really bad time. It seeks out like big negative emotions And if people are, you know, having a horrible time, it just kind of pulls them in, and has them relive that so it can see. But I don't know to what extent like Silent Hill is. But it's like it's fully alien. We don't know to what extent it's making decisions.
Yeah.
Probably not making decisions.
No.
Using a logic that exists to humans.
If there is logic in there, it's not something that we can understand or comprehend.
Most of what you see in like Silent Hill, you're just seeing the real world, and in Dark Silent Hill, you're seeing the horrible, a lesser specific trauma of the real world. So like,
if you were to see the actual version, it is very much like, I mean, you gotta treat it like any other cosmic horror thing. You'd go mad, and you would not be returning in any semblance from that.
The Silent Hill that we know is not like it's specific to Alessa. There's no way that was there before Alessa had everything happen.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool and horrible.
And horrible.
And I think, like, Silent Hill you can't, like, hold accountable for doing evil things because it's not... It doesn't... It either doesn't think or doesn't think about things that way. It's
just a place or is beyond anything that we can rationalize with or understand.
It's a rift in, like, reality caused by horrible trauma that seeks out more horrible trauma.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's the monsters in Silent Hill are just like your own personal demons. You can't really hold Silent Hill accountable for things because it's not a person. And Alessa is just a little girl who got horribly mutilated by her mom.
She has been hurt in every way possible.
Yeah, and they make it in like the movie. They made her out to be like the generic like evil little girl. I don't think Alessa like does anything bad. I think Alessa's just trying to hide. She does possess Sybil and then attack you, but that's like her last chance. Like, the only way she doesn't get caught at that point is if she manages to kill Harry.
Yeah, I mean, like, at that point, you'd already run into her in the lighthouse and, like, actively shown that you're trying to, like, capture her, or whatever the Floros does to her. She knows what that is. She knows what it's for. You are an enemy now. You are hostile, and you are actively trying to hurt her as far as she understands.
She's spent 7 years trying to, like, just get away from her mom.
Yeah.
Which she's not even... Like, even hiding in her own nightmares is better for her than, like, going back. Really, like, Silent Hill, the baddies are Dahlia and Kaufman. It's the cult. Like, I think it's important to the series that, like, people are the ones who've done all the horrible things. I think it's important to the vibe that we're doing. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's...
You can blame a person for every bad decision that is brought about Silent Hill and every bad decision that is brought up in Silent Hill.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They'll come in important as we go on in the series.
No, absolutely. It is very, like... It's imperative to, like, keep in mind that Silent Hill, while bad to us because it harms us as people, it's not necessarily something that is actively...
It's not malevolent.
Yeah.
It doesn't...
It's just doing what it does. It exists, and it just is. And that the reason things are as bad as they are, either because, like, this other world has breached into our existence, or... you know, you just find out that people are bad. It is just important to keep in mind that it's the people aspect of it that's horrible, and not necessarily this Outer Plane or the little girl that created it that are actually at fault here. Yeah, because it's like you were talking about earlier, the manifestation of the other world that we see is specific to like Alessa. That is her manifestation of the place, and that's how we can understand Silent Hill as a whole, or the other world as a whole. Like, this place existed before, not in that form, but it was there, and then it was people that decided to break the divider between us and bring this horrible thing into our realm. And horrible again in that it's bad for our health.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is. That's how it's existed. That's what it is. Yeah.
I think it's important for the series, and this is gonna be relevant when we get to a lot of the other games that were made later. It's very important that it's like low stakes, kind of very personal horror. Silent Hill 1, in a perfect world, would probably be the most like serious event that ever happened in Silent Hill, because a lot of people are hurt in this story. Like, there's a cop who died, there's a mayor who died, there's, you know, the town gets flooded with monsters. People are gonna, that's gonna be a bad time for people.
Yeah.
Like, there are still people who live there, even if there's not many. This is, it's kind of a serious incident.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's probably like the biggest one as well. I mean, I think we can like wrap 4 in with it too. Just because it talks about like the, you know, before all of this, the preparation towards how like Alessa, or what happened to Alessa, because it talks about Walter Sullivan, which we'll get to. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about it too much. That's the only other one that I could think of that would like have as big an impact on as many people. That's like a little less personal than like any of the other ones would be. But again, that's like because it's telling you what happened prior to Alessa. But this is the biggest one. This is the most serious one, and is the one that it is like a personal journey in the same way that some of the other ones are, but in a slightly different manner. Because the individual that it's like super affected, Cheryl/Alessa, you just kind of see like the ripples of how it's affected all the other people there while it's coming into existence. Yeah.
The song, I think it's really cool. This guy throwing this some stuff. It's fine.
This is you. Why is it? Oh,
you're writing white on white.
Horrible. That's not what I wanted. I just think it's neat.
And we also think that Silent Hill and Siren take place in the same universe.
Yeah.
There's nothing that like contradicts that, and there's no reason to say he wouldn't be able to. Just like to imagine this being a place where reality is very slowly just eroding. It's just a world that's slowly just falling into chaos. And
I don't know. I think with Silent Hill 4 coming into existence, and it taking place before this one, and taking place in rural Japan instead of wherever in America, I think that helps add credence to the idea that they exist in the same universe as well. Just saying. Yeah. I'm very excited about Forte. Of all the new Silent Hill games that have been announced, Forte is the one that I'm most excited about. Miss me with that Silent Hill 2 remake shit. Good luck, Blooper Team. Don't fuck it up. They're gonna fuck it up probably.
Will it be as bad as it can't be as bad as the HD remaster, right? I mean, you'll have a different script, so it could actually be. It'd certainly be bad in different ways. Good luck, Blooper Team.
And yeah,
I don't think like Silent Hill necessarily has to be in a Silent Hill game. I think it's more the close-in, very personal horror that's important for the series.
Yeah.
I don't know. only so much can happen in this one little town, right?
It's one of those that, like...
Which is another thing that they go crazy with in the later games. Like, they just bring in, like, 10 other surrounding towns that would all fighting demons from Silent Hill or whatever.
It would benefit to not... Even if they use the Silent Hill IP, it would benefit to not be in proximity to Silent Hill.
I guess you could keep doing stories. It's very easy to, like, I don't know. You can just go wild with it. It's fine.
It is. I think people have a hard time with that, just because, like, Silent Hill is in the title, and so it's like, well, we have to bring it back to Silent Hill, but it's like, but you don't. Like, here's the thing, like, you could do the siren treatment and, like, have it be in a completely different town and just have, like, a note or two that reference back to some obscure quote-unquote event that happened in this weird town, i.e. Another game that we've played previously. That's it. That's all you have to do. And it's fine. We'd be fine with that.
I think you could, if you do it in Silent Hill, you need to keep it real lucky.
Yeah.
You can't just keep making Silent Hill more and more important. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, Silent Hill, we've already seen, like, most of the decline. There's no one there. There's nothing. Oh.
The stakes at this point are just for an individual.
It's a semi-popular tourist destination if we go back, like, 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's Silent Hill. That's Silent Hill 1.
Silent Hill.
Oh boy! Just in time for Silent Hill Ascension. Are we excited for Silent Hill Ascension?
I'm actually very excited for Silent Hill Ascension. I don't think it'll be good, but I'm excited.
Same though. But yeah, that's it. That's Silent Hill. We've done it. We've recapped it. Points to remember. There are drugs. They're just used to get in tune with the other world. Alessa was abused horribly and became a vessel for God. Like you do.
There's something on the other side trying to come across, and
Dahlia responded with her daughter.
Yeah.
Here you go. Kaufman loves his drugs. Lisa is a sweet, innocent victim in all of this. Harry is best dad. And also Alessa, I guess the other important thing, the one thing that I can, like, remember from Origins that they definitely fucked up is, she was found by the police in the house after it was burned up. They kept her in the hospital for a little bit, and then faked her death and hid her in the basement, and no one except for Lisa and a handful of the cult people knew that she was there. And all of the monsters are specific, in Silent Hill 1 at least, are specific to Alessa. Sans the Incubus. And that's that. Harry is best dad.
The only one that's not specific to Alessa is the one that is an alien from another plane of existence who comes through if you let everything play out.
Yeah!
It's not if you let everything play out, it's if you attack Incubator. This is probably not like, whatever it is, it's probably not like, 100%. This is like the weakest possible version of it.
Well, he's
it's
a
just a
newborn.
really bad thing. We don't want that.
This Incubus is brand new. Kaufman doused Incubator Alessa in more Galapagos. The goop. Gook? Gunk. Oh god, I'm sorry. Gunk?
The goop.
Goop. Gunk?
Goop and gunk.
Goop and gunk. And that's what ejected the Incubus from her body. Similar to how we ejected the supposed parasite from Sybil.
So kind of similar to how the monster in Siren comes about, and
Yeah.
it's just kind of a mindless idiot god.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we fuck up the ritual. Yeah,
Yeah.
that can just happen.
And that's the rundown. We're all ready for Origins now. And by ready for Origins, I mean it's still gonna be a couple weeks off. Oh boy.
We're ready when
Yeah,
it's gonna.
that's that. I'm trying to think there's anything else, and I don't think there is.
I think it's neat.
Just think it's neat. Thanks for coming to our TED Talk. That's it. That's it. Unless we have anything else we want to talk about before we raid out.
I don't know. I think we covered most of the things, at least. I remember something we forgot to talk about as soon as we finish.
This is usually how it goes.
I think it's gone alarmingly well to say I was scared and we hadn't said anything.
Listen, told you it was gonna be fine.
Yeah, you're right.
We go say hi to Nimbly, but also just not raid tonight.
That's
maybe it's a no raid night. Ascension is tomorrow. We could potentially do some Halloween though.
I said, is it Halloween?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's Halloween tomorrow.
Spook'em's Eve. Is that on Dark Spook?
Oh, it did, didn't it? Sorry, I've got Alan Wake and Silent Hill on the brain right now, and only one ear not
Alan
covered by
MS Pen. I'll try and explain what the fuck happens in Alan Wake.
Yes, please. I'll post this in Discord so everyone can see it, and you can all understand the timeline of Silent Hill, because it's very obvious and very clear here what's going on.
This all makes sense.
And, yeah. So I guess, thanks everyone for hanging out and being here while we talk Silent Hill lore. In a very silly manner. I had fun with it, so, you know. Yeah, well, Ascension is tomorrow. We'll probably, I'm leaning towards Discord. It'll be a Discord thing. It's very late, is when it premieres is the thing. And the more that I'm, like, reading about it, as they send me emails reminding me about it, I'm scared that they're gonna do it in sessions.
Oh, jeez.
And that it's not all gonna happen tomorrow.
Oh,
so we'll see. And if that's the case, then I definitely don't want to, like, commit myself to Ascension streams all the time. It's true. Could. I'll probably record it while we're doing it.
That's a good idea.
So that we just have it, and it'd be nice to be able to, like, if it ends up doing it in, like, episodes or whatever, we'll have, like, all of them together. But, yeah, so that'll be in Discord. And it's Halloween tomorrow. Happy the Halloween Eve, friends. It's the best Halloween? Best holiday. I don't know how to fucking talk anymore. I'm done.
Talked for too long.
Yeah.
Stop.
Alright.
Pulling the plug, let's go.
Goodbye, friends. We love you. We'll see y'all later.